How can I trust my knowledge of the Greek language? This is a question I got just recently, and I think it's not a bad question. It's certainly an interesting question to address a concern that I've seen quite a lot that has arisen from some of the comments that I get in this YouTube channel. And that is around, how do we have confidence in the Greek that we've learned? How do we have confidence in the translation that we put together? And the answer to this really is, it's just the same as how do you know anything else? Really, you experience things and you come to see the truth and understanding of things. But language is a little different in one sense, and that is that often language can have nuance to it that causes us to pause and go, now I wonder if he means this or that. That's the nature of language, and sometimes even in the New Testament there can be things that aren't as clear as we might want them to be, or are actually in some cases deliberately ambiguous, or perhaps at least not as detailed as we might like it to be. And so there's this question then for us as 21st century thinkers about how do we actually have confidence in what we are reading from the New Testament, or the Old Testament for that matter, itself. So first of all, when we start to learn Greek, one of the first things you're going to do is you're going to learn vocabulary. And when you learn vocabulary, what you're doing is you're taking a Greek word and you're normally being given a gloss or a collection of glosses, 2 or 3 sometimes, to try and capture the meaning or the range of meaning of this word. This is called the lexical range of the word. There is, for each Greek word and for each English word for that matter, or Hebrew word, there is normally a range of meanings that something can mean, and we find that sometimes we can't use the same word consistently for the same word in Greek because there are different meanings for this word in some cases. I'll come back to that in just a moment. But what we do when we start learning vocabulary is we start with a basic gloss. In other words, what we get when we do our basic vocabulary, when you first start learning the language, is you get just something to start you off. A couple of words you can use that generally will fit and will do a pretty good job normally of kind of filling in the blanks of what this word actually means in your own language. Now, it doesn't mean to say that's all the word can mean, nor does it mean that this is the substance of the word in its entirety. So this is just a starter point. Now, when we get to a passage and we're reading the text for ourselves, we're going to find that there are some cases where that particular gloss we've been given is just not going to fit very well. And when we find that, that's when we need to go a little deeper. Now, for some of you, this is where you start. You will actually look at a word, you're not sure what it means, and so you just go directly to the dictionary. But a dictionary is actually for, or a lexicon for that matter, is actually designed for people who already have a gloss of the word, or who have seen a word but really just want to go a little bit deeper in it. Now, it's also good to extract a basic gloss, so if you don't know a word at all and you want to get a basic gloss for it, then you can get a basic gloss from a lexicon or a dictionary. But typically, you should think of a lexicon or a dictionary as a place you go to go deeper than the gloss that you already know for a word. In other words, you start with the gloss of the word, you learn that as a basic reference point, and then when you come to one of these passages that you're not sure what it means, you jump into a dictionary to go and ask, well, what other meanings are there for this word? What are the nuances of the way this word is being used? And so on and so forth. And from that then you get a deeper understanding of the word. This then adds to your experience as you're reading through the text and you're trying to understand the words themselves. A good example of this, just to sort of help you understand what I mean here, is the word logos. Now, most of you will know the word logos means word. So John 1:1 in the beginning was the word. However, there are times in the New Testament where you will bump into passages where the word is just not suitable as a translation for this word. Let me give you an example of, just to sort of help you understand what I'm getting at here. The word logon can be used in a variety of different ways. For instance, let's go to the parable of the talents, which is in Matthew chapter 25. In the parable of the talents, we have a landowner, or a lord if you like, who goes away, and when he does, he leaves some of his wealth in the hands of his slaves. And he apportions to them his wealth in coinage by weight. So a talent is a weight of coinage, right? So he gets these talents and he portions them out to his 3 different slaves in this parable. Now, at the end of that, he comes back, and it says there in Matthew 25, verse 19, after some time, the master of the house of those slaves, he comes and he settles a log on with them. Now, the word log on here, if you were to translate that as word, it would say he settles a word with them. Now, you can tell from the context, he's not interested in what they say, he's interested in what they've done with the money. That's the whole point here. And so in this context, the word log on takes on this accounting concept. So it's an account that he's looking for from them, not merely a word or some statement from them. Okay, it's really that idea of, in this case, it's the context is giving some meaning to this word log on, which then helps us to understand that really he's getting at a financial accounting rather than just purely, this is the meaning of this word, it means word here. Now, this word is used in this way a number of times in the New Testament. Romans 14, for instance, and Luke 16, both use this word this way. But there are other ways the word logos is used as well. Sometimes it's used for the idea of a reason. For instance, in 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 15, he's not asking them to give a word for the hope that is in them. He's not trying to get them to rename it. He's asking them for a reason why you have hope. When you go through all this hard stuff and you still have hope, why is that? Give me the reason for that. Give me an accounting if you like. But here the idea is not a financial accounting. Here the idea is a rational accounting. It's a reason if you like. And so we find this same terminology in Acts 18 and other places as well. So we do see then with a word like logos that there's actually a range of meaning that we get. And as we start to read the text, the more we read and the more we see these words being used in this way, the more familiar we'll get with them and the more we'll see how these words are used in different contexts. And so that then gives us some confidence that when I come to translate the text, if I've seen this word regularly, then I have an idea of how it's being used, how it works, what it means, the range of meanings available, and that then allows me then to plug that into this particular case to say, I think the right way he's speaking about this here is X because of Y, Z, something like that. So really what we're saying here is that as you read the text, you're going to grow in your confidence in your knowledge of the language. But that really brings me to the next point, and that is you really need to be reading the text. And this is one of the things that comes to me out of the comments here. There is a number of people who seem to assume that you can just go and do a Greek word study, look at words meaning up, and then plug that into the English context, if you like, to come to some conclusion about what this word then means. If you're doing that, let me just say what you're doing is not actually translating the text at all. What you're doing is just playing plug and play with language, in fact with words, and you're assuming that a single word in Greek is equivalent to a single word in English, and that is not by any means always the case. Because effectively, if you're just playing with glosses like that, you're just looking for one that's going to fit, and then the question needs to be fit what? And if it's your views of what this passage should say, then you rightly shouldn't have any confidence in what you're trying to draw out of your word studies. What you're looking for is what is the author trying to say? And you're not going to come to the authorial intent by your knowledge of an English version and then plugging in various different English words till one suits what you're trying to come to. That's sometimes called eisegesis because sometimes the idea is you're finding the word that fits what you want it to say rather than what it might actually say. And this is really important because one of the things we find between our modern day worldview and the worldview of the ancient world is that we think very differently. A modern reader of the Bible is asking very, very specific questions, and the ancient writers of these texts were not interested in those very specific questions, so they're not answering those questions. They're talking about something completely different, and our task is to say, what were they getting at? What were their concerns? And then how do we understand that ourselves rather than how do we answer my question? They might not be interested in answering your question, but that doesn't mean to say you won't get the answers from there. It just means to say they're not out there trying to say, if you ask me, is Jesus God? I'm going to say Jesus is God in the Greek text of the Bible to make it clear to you, because that isn't exactly always their concern. Sometimes they just assume these things and then you'll have to pick that up yourself. And often in the conversations that someone like Paul or Peter would have, they'd be asserting these things, but when they're writing to churches who have already heard these things, they don't have to assert those things all over again, so why would they? And so therefore, if you're asking some of these questions, you're just not going to find answers to them. So the question needs to be asked, what is the author actually trying to say? who's he saying it to, and what's he intending you to take away from that, or what's he intending for those people to take away from that text. And this is why it's so important that you learn to read the Bible in the original language. If you're going to work with the Greek at all, don't just do word studies. Actually learn how the language works. It's only as you read the language that you're going to understand the author's style and the way he writes. It's only as you read the language that you're going to be able to see the way he uses certain words. And it's only as you read the language that you're going to be forced to ask better questions about what he's actually saying, and you'll better understand with clarity exactly what he's trying to get across. Too many people are just doing word studies, and if you want to have confidence in your knowledge of Greek, you're never going to get it just doing word studies. It's just never going to get you there. You need to learn to read Greek. It's a little bit like, if you think about this in English, when you come to the English language and you come across a word you've never seen before, very often you can figure out what it means. Why is that? It's because you know the language, and you can see from the context how all of this works together to make, to insert meaning into this word you've never seen before. And then of course you go look the word up in a dictionary and you're like, oh yeah, that's kind of what I thought, but that helps clarify it. That's the way it should be working for us in Greek as well. So my encouragement to you is, if you're doing word studies, if you're questioning, am I making the right choices here? Because this is a legitimate question, and it's a really important question to ask. My encouragement is, I urge you, go learn the language properly. You will benefit from it in so many ways. It will help you in your knowledge of Scripture, that will help you in your obedience to Scripture, and that will result in blessing. And that's what you want out of your study of the Scriptures. So we're going to be starting a beginning Greek course real soon. If you want to be part of that, then go down here to bma.to/get started, join our Getting Started course. It's totally free. It gives you an idea of what's involved, and then join in our next beginning Greek course that starts next week. Join in. I look forward to seeing you there. If you've got any questions about this, leave a comment below. I'd love to hear from you there. And if you are underway learning Greek, keep taking small, consistent steps toward mastery, because that's how you're going to get that better understanding of Scripture, better obedience, and greater blessing from the Lord. Look forward to seeing you in the next video. See you there.